You know, there's a secret army being recruited right now, but not on some battlefield. It's happening right in our living rooms. And the soldiers? Well, they might be the very devices you're using every single day. Today, we're going to dive into the wild story of a massive malware operation called Kimwolf and the invisible army it commands from inside your home. So let me just ask you this straight up. Is that streaming box or digital photo frame you bought online secretly moonlighting for a criminal enterprise? I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but for millions of people, it's a reality they have no clue about. Because right now, a really dangerous new malware called Kimwolf has quietly infected over 2 million devices all over the world. Yeah, 2 million. And the truly scary part? The owners, they are completely unaware their hardware has basically been drafted into a criminal army. So, how does an army of 2 million smart devices even operate? Well, they're not acting alone. They're all connected into one massive, powerful network called a botnet. You can think of it as a secret digital army, just silently waiting for commands from a single source. So, what exactly is Kimwolf? Well, in simple terms, it's malware that hijacks your device's internet connection. It turns your TV box into an illegal proxy server. What that means is criminals can route all their shady online activity through your home network, making it look like their spam or hacking attempts are coming from you. It's really the perfect digital disguise. And we're not talking about your high-end, super secure computers here. Oh no. The main targets are those low-cost, kind of generic electronics you see all over the big online marketplaces. You know, things like cheap Android TV boxes, digital photo frames, and even some mobile phones with apps that seem innocent, but are secretly running a proxy service in the background.
So you're probably wondering, how does this even happen? How do millions of devices just get taken over like this? Well, it all comes down to what you could call a two-pronged attack. It's a perfect storm of security failures that criminals have gotten really good at exploiting.
This whole operation really only works because of two huge weak spots. First, the devices themselves. They're often shipped from the factory with these massive security holes. And second, the big proxy networks they connect to also have their own vulnerabilities. It creates this perfect pathway for attackers to just walk right in. The single biggest vulnerability on these devices is something called the Android Debug Bridge, or ADB. Now, this is a super powerful tool that's meant for developers, giving them total control. But on these cheap products, it's often just left turned on and wide open to the internet. It is literally the digital version of leaving the master key dangling in the front door lock. And the way they get infected is just shockingly simple. The attackers just scan the internet, looking for devices with this ADB feature open. Once they find one, a single command gives them total control. Then they force the device to go to a malicious website and use a final passphrase to unlock and install the Kimwolf malware. It's an automated, four-step process that can happen in just seconds. And here's a weird little tidbit that researchers found. The specific passphrase they used to unlock the malware was Krebs 5-Head Industries. A pretty bizarre but memorable fingerprint to leave at the scene of the crime. You know, this whole thing could have stayed completely in the shadows if it wasn't for the sharp eyes of one person, the student who ended up sounding the alarm. So let me introduce you to Benjamin Brundage. He's a 22-year-old cybersecurity researcher at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And it was him who, back in October of 2025, stumbled upon this massive hidden network. He was the one who put all the pieces together and realized the true scale of this Kimwolf botnet. But here's what Brundage figured out that was so crucial. The problem wasn't just the cheap TV boxes. He actually found a massive security flaw in one of the world's biggest residential proxy services, a company called IPIDEA. And that flaw, that was the missing piece. It's what allowed the criminals to tunnel through the network and infect devices directly in people's homes. So why? Why build a secret army of 2 million devices? Well, as you can probably guess, it all comes down to money. This botnet is literally an army for hire, a powerful tool that gets rented out to the highest bidder for all sorts of nasty stuff. And when you look at what this army is actually made of, wow, a whopping 2/3 of all the infected devices are Android TV boxes. It just confirms that these cheap, insecure streaming devices, they are the absolute backbone of this entire criminal operation. And the kinds of things this botnet is used for, it's basically a menu for modern cybercrime. It's used to send out huge volumes of spam, commit ad fraud by faking clicks, try to take over people's accounts on other websites, and even launch powerful DDoS attacks that can knock major websites completely offline.
So this is their business model, right? This is how they cash in. They sell services like forcing unwanted apps onto those 2 million devices. They rent out the combined internet bandwidth of all their victims to other criminals, and they offer those DDoS attacks as a service. It's a diversified and, unfortunately, a very profitable criminal enterprise.
But this might be the most disturbing part of the whole story. You'd think a botnet this huge would be a major target for takedowns, and it is, but Kimwolf has proven to be the botnet that just won't die. So get this, researchers watched a takedown attempt that basically flatlined the botnet. Infections dropped to almost zero. You'd think, great, it's over, right? Nope. Just a few days later, poof, it was back to its full strength of 2 million devices, almost like nothing ever happened. So how is that possible?
Well, the answer comes down to one huge number, 100 million. That's how many available proxy IP addresses are offered by that vulnerable service, IPIDEA. This giant pool of potential connections is the fuel that lets the Kimwolf fire reignite almost instantly.
And that's the secret to its resilience. That's its superpower. Even if you manage to clean millions of devices, the operators just dip back into that massive vulnerable IDEA network to find and infect millions more. They have a nearly endless supply of new recruits for their army, which makes this botnet almost impossible to kill. And all of this leaves us with one big, lingering question, doesn't it? I mean, the whole promise of the smart home is about convenience and connection. But as we keep filling our lives with more and more of these cheap internet-connected gadgets, are we unknowingly building the perfect infrastructure for the next wave of cybercrime? Are we leaving our digital doors wide open?